Hello again, this is part 4 of Buugeng Basics. I'm taking all 3 of the first movements I have shown you and putting them together. If you haven't seen these movements or haven't mastered them very well, I would highly recommend that you watch my first 3 videos from the Buugeng Basics series. So, we're going to combine the finger motion with the popularly used wrist motion, and also the second wrist movement. I'll be calling that wrist movement number 2 in this video. This will be wrist movement number 1, the more popular movement used. Okay, so let's go back to combining the first 2 of those movements, which would be the finger motion and wrist movement number 1. So let's break it down. Start in the finger motion. The transition starts here. At this point, with the momentum of the Buugeng, I have the ability to slide to this position. That gets me in the starting position for wrist movement number 1. Okay, let's look at that again. From here, slide, wrist movement. Okay, now let's look at getting out. Back into the finger motion. So, I slid to get in, and sure enough, you must slide to get out. See, now I'm here, my top 4 fingers and my thumb, everything's reversed. That allows me to get back into my finger motion. Alright, so now let's transition between the finger motion and the second wrist motion. So, slowing down, the motion starts, sure enough, the same way that you started into the first wrist movement, but instead of going to a pinching position, you go to your ring. And then you can slide to here and keep the movement going. Now, let's look at getting out. So again, getting in, slide, getting out at this point. Slide again. You're here, then push with the top fingers and start moving the fingers again. Okay, last transition. That's going to be between wrist movement number 1 and wrist movement number 2. Okay, so how to do this? Starting in wrist movement number 1. At this point, as you come pushing over with your hand, almost back to the starting position, with the momentum still going, we're almost as if we're going to continue wrist movement number 1. Instead, we slide. So again, wrist movement number 1, almost back to starting position, slide. You want to start back into wrist movement number 1. You start at the starting position, right here. You've been sliding, moving your bottom fingers out of the way. Instead, you're going to pinch at this point, and then back into number 1. Okay, so I'm just going to do one final demo of all 3 of them combined together so that you can see me transitioning between all 3 movements fluidly. Okay, so starting with finger motion. Second one. Third motion. Wrist movement number 2. Finger. Wrist movement number 1. Number 2. Finger. Number 1. 2. 1. Finger. Number 2. Wrist movement. Wrist movement number 1. Fingers. This allows you to do a very quick Buugeng motion. It allows different parts of your fingers not to get, or your wrists not to get so tired. Regardless, it's quite strenuous and it will take you some time to get used to each of these movements, and then it will take you some more time to get used to using them all together, transitioning between all of them.